Welcome to Africa Good Morning. Today we begin in Kenya, where the arrest of a tech developer resisting a controversial finance bill has triggered public outrage. In Sudan, a major shake-up as the Prime Minister dissolves the transitional government. Côte d'Ivoire faces political tensions ahead of its 2025 election, while a second group of Afrikaner refugees from South Africa lands in the U.S. We also explore concerns from South Africa astronomers over the impact of Starlink satellites, plus economic headlines from Nigeria and our Zimbabwe report with Talent Gore. You can watch our show on DSTV 285 and GOTV 25, as well as our website, which is called oneup2.com, and NTV Africa on YouTube. My name is Aina Raiza, and this is Africa Good Morning. Shortly after the break, we'll bring you our current affairs. Leading our top stories this morning, the arrest of Rose Njeri, a software developer who built an online tool to help Kenyans challenge the controversial finance bill, has sparked public outrage across the country. She was detained after police raided her Nairobi home, seizing devices linked to the website she created. The platform allowed users to email Parliament and oppose clauses in the bill feared to increase living costs. Her lawyer and the Law Society of Kenya has condemned the detention as authoritarian, especially since it occurred ahead of a public holiday, delaying her court appearance. Activists say police ransacked her home, and Jerry is worried for her two children. The new finance bill removes zero-rated status on basic goods, potentially raising prices. Critics also warns it threatens privacy by letting tax officials access personal data without a court order. Finance Minister John Mbadi defended the changes, citing tax fraud, while protests and mounting pressure continues ahead of his presentation of the proposals in Parliament next week. Moving over to our next story, Sudan's newly appointed Prime Minister Camille Idris has dissolved the caretaker government, marking a significant political shift amid the country's ongoing civil conflict. Appointed by Army Chief and Head of State Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, Idris took office on Saturday in Port Sudan, becoming the first Prime Minister since 2021 military coup. The dissolution was confirmed by the state news agency SUNA, though no timeline has been given for the announcement of the new government. Idris pledged to remain neutral and focus on restoring stability, security, and reconstruction efforts in war-torn Sudan. His appointment comes as the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces threatens to force its own rival administration. The move highlights deepening divides between the army and RSF, RSF, whose battle for control has left Sudan in a political and humanitarian crisis since last year. Idris' leadership now faces the daunting challenge of uniting fractured factions and steering the nation towards peace and governance reform. Moving over to our next story, as Côte d'Ivoire edges closer to its October 2025 presidential elections, political uncertainty looms large. President Alassane Ouattara has yet to confirm whether he will seek another term, keeping the ruling party and opposition alike in suspense. Meanwhile, leading opposition figures including ex-president Laurent Gbagbo, Charles Blé Gaudet, Guillaume Soro, and Tidjane Thiam faces legal or constitutional barriers preventing them from contesting. Thiam, recently re-elected as head of the PDCIRDA, remains a symbol of resistance despite judicial pushback. A coalition of opposition parties met over the weekend, demanding a transparent and inclusive electoral process and calling for reinstatement of the barred candidates. Analysts warn that unless these tensions are addressed, Côte d'Ivoire risks descending into political turmoil similar to its past electoral crisis. While the country has enjoyed economic progress, political reconciliation and institutional trust remain fragile. With just 5 months to go, the nation appears to be balancing dangerously between democratic progress and a return to instability. In our second last story, a second smaller group of white Afrikaners from South Africa quietly arrived in the United States on Friday, flying commercially from Johannesburg. Like the first group that left in early May, they claim persecution in South Africa and are among an estimated 8,000 Afrikaners that are set to be resettled in the U.S. Controversially, they have been granted expedited refugee status under orders from current president Donald Trump, who has labeled them victims of genocide and unjust racial discrimination, claims that South Africa has strongly denied. Trump also halted U.S. aid to South Africa in February, citing alleged mistreatment of Afrikaners amid the country's land reform laws, which permit the land expropriation without compensation in rare cases. Now, despite this law, no such exploration has yet occurred, while Afrikaners cite crime, especially farm attacks, as another reason for immigrating. Statistics have shown that such incidents are rare and most murder victims are black. Trump's refugee decision has sparked backlash from both in South Africa and internationally. In our final story, astronomers working in South Africa's Square Kilometre Array telescope are raising alarms about potential interference from Elon Musk's Starlink satellite, which could obstruct their groundbreaking cosmic observations. As South Africa considers licensing Starlink, scientists have urged authorities to include conditions that safeguard SKA's sensitive frequency ranges. The telescope, located in Northern Cape, is among the world's most powerful radio astronomy tools and already boasts discoveries like radio galaxy 32 times the size of the Milky Way. Experts warn that Starlink's low-orbit satellite could flood the skies with disruptive signals, likened to shining a spotlight into someone's eye. SKA and South Africa Radio Astronomy Observatory are lobbying for licensing rules that could force Starlink to steer clear of SKA's bent or briefly cut transmissions, while Musk SpaceX criticizes South Africa's ownership laws. The government remains firm on its empowerment policies. Talks continue amid wider global efforts to regulate satellite interference. Now, shortly after the break, we will return with the weather and thereafter, Talent Gore. As promised, we returned with our correspondent all the way in Zimbabwe, Talent Gore, with her top stories. Talent, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing good, Aina and Africa. Good morning.
I am doing fantastic. Now, I understand a man who's 39 years old was killed by a vicious pit bull, and he was left to roam by the owner in Harare's new Bluff Hill. Am I saying that correct? Please give us more on this story.
Yes, so the owner of the dog, a 40-year-old man from New Bluffview in Harare, has been arrested and charged with culpable homicide after his pit bull attacked a man in the street and killed him. Mike Mupinga's dogs have been a menace for local residents for years. The body of the victim was found near the suspect's residence with dog bite wounds. The body was then referred to Paranato Group of Hospitals for post-mortem. Mupinga, who's the owner of the dog that killed the man who was taking a stroll in the street, he has several people in his yard, and apparently his perimeter wall is the height that his dog can actually jump over. So residents and other neighbors were saying that these dogs have been a menace for quite a long time in the neighborhood, and this is not the first time that the dogs have attacked someone. Apparently, before the dogs attacked someone, and Mupinga had to pay nurses and police so that his dogs could not be taken away. The neighbors are saying that he had so many dogs, but right now he was only left with four. And when the incident happened, the police and the SPCA came over and took the dogs away from his residence, and Mpinga has since been arrested. He will be in court today to answer for charges of culpable homicide. And also, the police are saying that he has several cases at the courts and even with the police. This is not the first time. And also, his neighbors are saying that they would warn him, they would plead with him to do something about his dogs, but he was rather arrogant and he would chase away people, saying that his dogs are fine and his perimeter wall is exactly how he needs it to be. But after this tragedy, neighbors are actually calling for the ban of pit bulls in Zimbabwe, because that's not the first time that pit bulls have killed people in the country. This is actually the third time since last year that someone has been killed by pit bulls.
That is a very sad talent, but nonetheless, we must move on. Now, in your next story, President Mnangagwa officially opens the Travelers interchange to motorists and promises 6 more interchanges in Harare. Tell us about this.
Yes, the Travelers interchange is actually Zimbabwe's first interchange, and President Emerson Mnangagwa officially opened it on Friday, and he promised more interchanges in the capital city and beyond. Apparently, Zimbabwe does not have. This is the first interchange for Zimbabwe, so it is quite historic, and some people are saying that it is worth celebrating. But the high cost, although the long delayed project is now complete, its high cost reported at 88 million United States dollars has sparked public and parliamentary debate, with calls for an audit to clarify how the funds were used, as many accused the government of massive looting. Engineers and citizens in general, they are saying that interchange could not and does not cost 88 million United States dollars. They are blaming, or rather, they are accusing the government of massive looting. They're saying that during that project, a lot of money was looted because that interchange alone cannot cost 88 million. There are a lot of interchanges that have been built in other countries in Africa and beyond, which cost way less than what Zimbabwe used for the construction of the Travelers interchange. So we are just going to find out and to see how the parliament in particular is going to go forward with this, whether they are going to call the Minister of Transport and Infrastructure Development to parliament to answer to the charges, or rather to answer to these questions on whether the cost, whether the money that they say they used is actually the money they used, or rather there was looting of public funds during construction of that interchange.
All right, now I understand that 4 people have been arrested in Harare while looking for buyers for 237 kilograms of ivory. Where is the ivory coming from? Please get into this story.
4 suspects were arrested for unlawful possession of ivory weighing 237 kilograms after police detectives acted on a tip-off on Sunday. They were apprehended by CID Minerals, Flora and Fauna detectives on May 30 while allegedly looking for buyers. Police recovered 35 elephant tusks staged in brown sacks in a Talent Gore vehicle. A follow-up search at Chabati's residence led to the recovery of 6 more tusks, bringing the total to 41 pieces of ivory. The suspects are expected to face charges under Zimbabwe's wildlife protection laws. Apparently, being found in possession of ivory in particular is illegal in Zimbabwe, because the authorities believe that those people, they would have poached in wildlife. They would have poached in wildlife parks, and they would have killed elephants, which is illegal. So right now, these people, they're going to appear in court today to answer to these charges. 237 kilograms of ivory is quite a lot, and one would just wonder where and how they got to be in possession of such huge amounts of ivory. So today they will appear in court to answer to these charges.
All right, now it's time for us to get into our sports stories. Now, South Africa is set to face Zimbabwe before the World Cup Test Championship final, and Talent has more on this story.
Yes, South Africa's cricket team are set to take on Zimbabwe in a four-day warm-up match from June 3 in England. The contest will be played at Arundel Castle Cricket Ground in Sussex. This will serve as key preparations for the Proteas ahead of their all-important World Test Championship final at the Oval against Australia starting June 11. Zimbabwe, meanwhile, are coming off a historic appearance in a one-off test against England at the Trent, their first test on English soil in 2 decades, a landmark moment in their cricketing journey. Despite England winning the contest by innings and 45 runs, Zimbabwe had plenty of moments to remember from the game, especially Brian Bent's fighting turn in the first innings.
And also that the Warriors have arrived in Morocco ahead of Burkina Faso and Niger games. Tell us more about this.
Yes, so the Warriors have arrived in Morocco ahead of their two friendly matches this week. The national team will face Burkina Faso on June 6 before playing Niger on June 10. Both matches will be held in Casablanca at a venue to be announced. A group of locally based players left Harare on Sunday morning and has joined up with foreign-based stars who flew directly to Morocco. The team is expected to hold a light training session later today before conducting a full training session. Meanwhile, Burkina Faso will be in action on Monday evening. Sorry, was in action yesterday evening when they played against Tunisia in a friendly match in Tunis.
Finally, talented job praiser. World Tour champs US when I personally love job praiser and I can't wait to hear about him from you. Tell us about this.
Yeah, Japreza is a superstar. Zimbabwe's musician sensation Japreza is set to enthrall music fans in the United States with two highly anticipated performances in Washington, D.C. and Dallas, Texas, as part of his Ndini Mukudze World Tour. The global tour, which kicked off in Harare with the spectacular launch of Japreza's 14th album, promises to be a resounding success. The Washington, D.C. show is set for July 4, followed by the Dallas, Texas performance the next day. Prior to the US leg, Ja Preza will perform in Toronto, Canada on July 1 and then in Japan on July 15. The tour will feature performances in the United Kingdom, Germany, Australia, and South Africa. We surely hope during his tour he will include more it will include shows in other African countries because we realize that Africans particularly love Japreza. So we surely hope that he's going to also do a tour in Africa in particular.
All right, talent, we wish Japreza all the best and we cannot wait to see him take on stages all over the world. Thank you so much for bringing us these top stories.
You're welcome and thank you very much for having me.
That is Talent Gore, all the way in Zimbabwe, Harare. And on that note, we've come to the end of today's Africa Good Morning. We will see you tomorrow, same time, same place. We're wishing you a very blessed Tuesday ahead.